If you haven't already heard, then let me be the first to tell you, the Dutch GP was a banger, which means amazing for any of you not born in the 90s in the UK. The changing conditions throughout the weekend meant the red flag was flown at least once in every session, and when things change, mistakes are made. I covered Ferrari's problems in our video yesterday, and there were a lot. Today, we're going to look at McLaren, who really struggled to make the most of conditions that their drivers are normally amazing in. Lando Norris was less than impressed with his pit wall, but there are reasons for him to be positive. Let's check it out. McLaren's Dutch Grand Prix outlook was incredibly positive on Friday, like maybe a chance of pushing Sergio Perez off a podium place positive. In FP1, they were 6th and 8th fastest, but with a new rear wing fitted, the team needed a little time to get their setups dialed in. In FP2, they showed what a difference that new rear wing made, topping the timing sheet ahead of Max Verstappen. But then it started raining a lot, all the time, and Oscar Piastri had a pretty hefty crash. McLaren decided, for the sake of parts and the requirement for different setups due to the weather, that they would be better off with the old wing. Nonetheless, Lando Norris took a place on the front row and Oscar lined up alongside Sergio Perez on the 4th row. They were set for a great race and a big point score, but things went really bad after that. Looking at the final race standings, both drivers really should have finished ahead of Carlos Sainz, and if they'd been within 5 seconds of Sergio Perez across the line, that would have meant 4th and 5th at worst. The MCL 60 is fast now, probably challenging Fernando Alonso for best of the non-Red Bull cars. McLaren should have come away with big points and made a huge gain on Ferrari in the constructors' standings. Instead, Lando will have been lying in bed having flashbacks to Sochi 2021, where he led the race before rain came down with just a few laps to go, and he tried to stick it out on slick tyres. He finished 7th that day as well. The similarities are almost spooky. McLaren's problems were the exact same as those in Sochi 2 years ago. Lando stayed out for 3 laps on the soft tyre before pitting for intermediates. Piastri pulled the same move as Alex Albon, who finished a place ahead of him, persevering through the rain on slicks and pitting for fresh softs on lap 15. His second set of soft tyres lasted him 31 laps. Alex Albon managed 44 laps on his race-starting soft tyre. McLaren waited too long to bring Lando in, and then pulled Piastri in roughly 30 laps early. If they hadn't pitted Piastri on lap 15, he would have saved roughly 5 seconds, which would have turned his 9th place into a 5th place. They were meant to be podium contenders, but the team's strategy choices left them 7th and 9th across the line, and Lando Norris wants answers. It's clear we made the wrong decision. We made a bad decision, and it's something we'll review and discuss because I guess we've made a couple this season. We've lost too many positions, and also the points throughout this year with a couple of these things. The second part of the race, it looked like we made the right decision. We were one of the first ones to box, and we gained some time and position to George Russell. I'm not exactly sure what pit stops Lando is referring to earlier in the season. It might come as a surprise to you, but I don't keep an exact database of every pit stop and its consequences throughout the whole season. To be fair to McLaren, they are in a very new situation. As a Formula 1 team, they aren't used to fighting for podiums each race. You've got to go back 10 years to the last season Hamilton was on the team to see a McLaren car that was capable of fighting for podiums every race. When 2022 started, and Mercedes weren't the fastest car on the grid by a long way, they really struggled for strategy. For 8 years, they've been able to play it safe, knowing that their car was fast enough that they didn't need to take risks. Making decisions that worked when they had the fastest car lost them a lot of places and points when they no longer had that advantage. They adapted though, and McLaren will as well. But at Zandvoort, waiting 1 or 2 laps to bring Lando Norris into the pits cost him 10 places on track, and that hurt. Asked by Sky F1 after the race how satisfied he was with the result, Norris replied, "Not too satisfied. The second half of the race was good. I think we did everything we could. We undercut a few cars and we had a relatively decent race. But we just lost everything in the beginning with the decision to stay out on the slicks when it was too wet. We just lost a lot more than we ever should have done. So that was pretty much not game over, but just threw everything away that we worked hard for yesterday. So a bit frustrating from that side." A big part of the problem for the team was a misread on the weather. Lando was told by his race engineer on lap 2 that the weather was easing, and asked if he could keep the car on track as it dried, to which he said yes. Unfortunately, the weather didn't clear quickly enough for him. Though by the time he pitted, he almost would have been better off just staying out like his teammate did. Asked if he wanted to come in when the track was becoming increasingly wet, Norris replied, "It was just different information, and nothing was just clear enough. Something for us to review, let's say. After the first lap, when I was second and I got overtaken so easily by Perez, I was surprised we stayed out in the first place. There is a lot of learning for McLaren to do after the Dutch Grand Prix, but considering the incredibly challenging conditions during the race, they could have done worse. Lando's criticisms might even be a little harsh considering how they came back after the messy opening laps. The team's CEO, Zak Brown, is more than happy to hear it though. He said a few times he wants his drivers to push the team, and Lando's growing confidence in his own abilities is doing just that. There are times when it's down to pace, and times when it's down to strategy, and the strategy is what messed us up, Lando said before being asked to compare his own car to that of Aston Martin and Mercedes. I don't think the pace is bad, the pace was okay. Not good enough if you want to say what was our pace compared to Aston's. It was pretty terrible. Compared to Mercedes? Pretty terrible. So our pace was a long way off the pace that we showed in qualifying. And our one lap is still a lot more competitive than our race pace. I think that's becoming more and more evident, and we're doing whatever we can to fix it and make steps forward. But at the minute, it's nowhere near enough. Luckily for Lando, the team are making big steps forward. Wind tunnels are a massive part of what makes a Formula 1 team successful. Without a good wind tunnel, you literally cannot win. McLaren have been using a wind tunnel owned by Toyota in Central Europe for almost a decade, but now their own one at their factory is finally complete and up and running. The construction of the new building allows the team to drastically cut down on spending, with the new wind tunnel just a few hundred yards from the team's model shop. It helps to put McLaren's recent resurgence into perspective, with the team's upgrades propelling them to second best on the grid, without having the use of any of their own new facilities. We're in ours now, which is very exciting, Brown told Sky Sports. It's state-of-the-art, very convenient, about a 100-yard walk to our model shop. I think we'll see the productivity of that. Efficiency and productivity has improved. Size-wise, I think we're the same as everyone else. Now, things like the wind tunnel, when we were renting a wind tunnel, you're obviously paying a premium. Now that we have our own, we can reallocate those monies into other areas, hence being able to recruit some more people and increase headcount in certain departments. It isn't going to be an instant improvement for McLaren. Anything in the wind tunnel at the moment is probably planned for production towards the end of this season, if not the start of next. It will also take time to adjust to the new technology. I'm no expert, but from what I have read and watched, they are incredibly complicated, and how you simulate the real world is different in every single one. Even once you know exactly what you're doing, you still make mistakes as well. Mercedes were testing parts that were built to the wrong scale last year and didn't realize until they bolted them onto the actual car, and nothing worked like it did in the wind tunnel. McLaren were just one of many teams to have a tough weekend in the Netherlands, but it could have been much worse. Lando might have been angry at the end of the day on Sunday, but I'm sure on Monday morning he had realized that things could have been much worse, and Monza will be another chance at a podium for him. Do you think Lando is right to be so upset about the pit stop mistakes McLaren made? Or is this just growing pains for a team on the up? Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.